Hello, everyone. I think we'll get started. Thank you for joining us for the next in our quarterly webinar series on various topics important to our community of condo and co-op board members and residents. My name is Andy Marks. I'm Senior Vice President at Maxwell-Kates, where I oversee all new business and marketing. I also manage a small handful of buildings as well. I started my career in property casualty insurance and risk management at Chubb on multiple ends of the business. I spent the past 2 decades in media, entertainment, and advertising, including stints at Universal Pictures, PR firm Edelman, and most recently running my own marketing and entertainment consultancy. And over those years, a running theme through my work was sustainability and corporate social responsibility, including environmental impact and alternative energy. So today's topic is something about which I am quite passionate. I spent 7 years serving on the board of my 210-unit co-op on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. The last 5 of those years as president. There, I worked with my board and outside consultants on addressing Local Law 11 facade and Local Law 97 energy efficiency and reduction of our carbon footprint by rebricking our entire building during that time and investing in and implementing a steam to gas conversion. So also relevant to tonight's topic. I enjoyed my board experience so much that I actually decided to make it my career. And so here I am at Maxwell-Kates. Finally, I am a New York State licensed real estate salesperson. Next, we have my colleague at Maxwell-Kates, Faith Rodriguez-Price. She is compliance director. The compliance department she oversees does research, analysis, and implementation of the ever-growing and changing New York City and New York State policies and regulations impacting our portfolio of managed properties. Faith and her team monitor all required annual filings and ensures all buildings, equipment, and infrastructure is tested and filed on time with all the building-related agencies, protecting each property from expensive violations issued by the following New York City departments: Department of Buildings, Environmental Control Board, the Fire Department, Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, Housing Preservation and Development, and the Sanitation Department, to name a few. She works directly with Maxwell-Kates' property managers to investigate the underlying issues on each property and develops and implements strategies to successfully remove any violations with minimal risk and monetary damages to the building. Faith has nearly a decade of experience in real estate property management compliance for residential multifamily co-ops, condos, and rental properties, as well as some commercial properties. Welcome, Faith. Also on tonight's panel is Fatou Jabbie. Fatou is an energy efficiency expert, entrepreneur, and business owner. Her work in New York City centers around policy and compliance, social equity, and economic development, project engineering, implementation, and energy cost savings through the delivery of a more comprehensive range of systems upgrades that address climate change or meet New York City's 80 by 2050 carbon emission reduction targets. Fatou has helped architects, companies, and government agencies build greener buildings, develop better building energy models, deliver LEED certified buildings, and engineer IT smart controls and control and sensor solutions in the built environment. Welcome, Fatou. Next, Andrew Chintz develops and implements programs at the intersection of finance and energy efficiency. So he's our finance expert on tonight's panel. He brings a seasoned career spanning 30 years as a senior level municipal and real estate finance expert, including 24 years in diverse roles at MBIA, a municipal bond insurer, as a founding member, board member, and chairman of the Energy Improvement Corporation. Andrew was instrumental in developing and launching New York State's PACE program, and that's an important component of financing these types of projects. So we'll talk about that tonight. He led demand aggregation for NYSERDA's Retrofit NY program, which is adopting the European energy sprung model to drive a scalable whole building approach for a net zero energy building solution for affordable housing. Andrew also led market development for the NYC Energy Efficiency Corporation to drive solar storage projects in the affordable housing and community development space. And finally, our solar expert, Jose Galvez Contreras. Jose is a clean energy professional who provides solar consultation and assistance to affordable housing and market rate building owners in New York City. Jose joined Solar One in the spring of 2019 to facilitate cost-effective solar projects and to research and develop strategies to expand equitable access to clean energy. Jose is also culminating his doctoral studies in public and urban policy at the New School for Public Engagement. His dissertation focuses on the intersection of environmental justice, workforce development, and the green economy. Jose holds 2 master's degrees, one in public and urban policy and one environmental law and policy. He brings over a decade of expertise in sustainability planning, small business development, community organizing, and political engagement. So welcome, panelists. As you can see, the team we've assembled are truly esteemed experts in their fields, and we are grateful to you all for participating. So thank you again for attending, and let's get started. So first, we're going to conduct our quick poll. So if you wouldn't mind, it is now launched. Answering that poll, you should see, there we go. So just answer that so we can get a sense of how our attendees break down. So we have about 60-40 in terms of even a little bit more residential only versus mixed use. So I am going to, thank you for that. I'm going to share my screen right now. And we have our presentation deck. And go to the start of it. And hopefully you can see my screen. Okay. So I'm going to give it to Fatou to take it away. Fatou, it's all yours.
All right. Well, can you all hear me? Can you hear me, Andy?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. And thank you, Andy and Faith, for having us as part of the Maxwell-Kates team to join you as the New York City Accelerator. Our agenda this evening is going to go through local building energy laws, and it's going to go back from the Greener Greater Buildings Plan up to where we are today with the Climate Mobilization Act laws. And then we're going to go into the program overview of the New York City Accelerator that has been around since 2015. And then we're going to touch upon financing, and my colleague Andrew Chintz is going to talk about that from the New York City Accelerator program perspective. And then we'll touch upon solar viability, which Jose will address. Then we'll pass it on to Kate, and then we'll Kate from Maxwell-Kates. And then we'll go into questions and answers. Next slide. All right, so Andy introduced me earlier, and I'm going to just quickly reiterate. My name is Fatou Jabbie. I am a senior account manager with the New York City Accelerator program. And my team and I focus on mixed-use multifamily buildings, hotels, industrial properties, manufacturing and institutional buildings, houses of faith, office buildings, and commercial buildings across the 5 boroughs. What we're looking at here is a flow chart of a suite of laws that I'm going to touch upon at a very high level, and then subsequently do a deeper dive on each one of them. But a quick overview on those and how they fit together. In 2019, New York City announced a goal to cut its carbon emission reduction 80% by 2050. And this was based on Mayor de Blasio's vision in One City Built to Last, which includes a package of laws called the Climate Mobilization Act of 2019. And those laws include Local Law 92, 95, 96, and 97, and I will expand on that. And then, but for now, what I want to draw your attention to is looking at the coloring of the screen that we're looking at, it's a flow chart, and the associated laws based on that coloring. So from left to right, assuming we're looking at a building that needed to comply with Local Law 84, which is part of the Greener Greater Buildings Plan. Oh, we need to go back to the slide. Part of the Greener Greater Buildings Plan of 2009. So there's a building here on the left-hand side that shows a grade of D, which is just letter grade of 47. And to the top left corner, it also shows carbon emission reductions, which is associated to Local Law 97. Subsequently, it is also showing benchmarking law, Local Law 84. Now, what these three laws have in common is that Local Law 84, 95, which is the Building Energy Efficiency Law, and Local Law 97, each requires compliance year over year. So I'd say imagining a building that needs compliance year over year for those. Subsequently, if it's 50,000 square foot and larger, it would need to comply with Local Law 87, which is the retrocommissioning law. That's the yellow arrow that follows the blue one. So retrocommissioning, Local Law 87 requires auditing and retrocommissioning every 10 years. And it is part of the Greener Greater Building Plan of 2009. If a building have a report that shows audits that have been done across all the energy consuming systems, the law requires that that building address deficiencies around retrocommissioning. The energy conservation measures or the water conservation measures are not necessarily required to be complied with Local Law 87. Now, imagine where we're today that feeds into Local Law 96, which is the red arrow, and that basically is New York City PACE financing, and that is part of the Climate Mobilization Act. This slide is meant to sort of integrate how these laws fit together and the synergies between them. So if a building complies with Local Law 87 and it has energy and water conservation measures, essentially they would need to be financed so the building can either realize energy cost savings, carbon emission reductions, and that's what the New York City PACE financing law affords buildings in the 5 boroughs. So following the path of the similar building, given the identified measures and the financing option, a building can have the opportunity to implement in either a building envelope retrofit opportunity, upgrading the walls and the facade or the window, or the building could subsequently look at Local Law 92 or 94, which is the Sustainable Roofs Law. And 92 and 94 are part of the Climate Mobilization Act. And if a project makes sense to implement either solar or green roofs, which I will expand on a little bit throughout my presentation, it can utilize not only the measures that have been identified from Local Law 87 using PACE financing or other alternative financing options. It just kind of outlines the fact that these laws are interconnected, there are synergies between them, and being able to leverage existing laws and financing them is going to help the building go through. Subsequently, we're looking at benchmarking. Same building that had a letter grade of D in the beginning of the flowchart that I was explaining. If this property has upgraded the recommendations that came from the auditing under retrocommissioning, and they were able to secure financing and look at building envelope upgrades or Local Law 97 or Local Law, retrofitting either with a green roof or solar, this property following the next year of compliance has an opportunity to reduce its building letter grade or improve its building letter grade from a grade of 47 to a grade of 75. And Local Law 84, 95, and 97 requires annual compliance. This sort of shows a flow of year over year, how a property can go through and improve not only its building letter grade, but also comply with Local Law 84 and also address its carbon emission reduction potential by implementing innovative energy conservation measures.
70% of the city's carbon emissions, more than any other source, comes from buildings. If we get buildings right, we get the entire process right.
The New York City Accelerator provides guidance, kind of a concierge service to people who own and manage buildings.
Moving through the bureaucracy, it's just so complex that those who are attempting to get the services, never receive them because they become frustrated.
That's what the accelerator does, is it provides that one-stop shop, that guidance to make it easy for co-op boards and owners to go ahead and get all the resources that they are eligible for and do this kind of great work.
With the support of the accelerator, the Fairview here is on their way to becoming the first co-op to use PACE financing. What that means is that they will repay for their loan in installments through a charge on their property tax bill. So that means they don't have to worry about the upfront cost of all this great work they've done.
They've installed LED lighting. They added solar panels. They made buildings more livable and green. So I'm urging all New Yorkers, all building owners, co-ops, condominiums, we're saying look into the accelerator program and see what you can do to retrofit your buildings as we move towards decarbonization.
We offer personalized service, assistance, and advice, and we can help you get connected to incentives to help pay for projects that lower your costs, bring more comfort to your tenants, improve our air quality, and help comply with local laws. It is a win-win-win, right?
At the Fairview, it's been a great business decision to look at energy efficient systems because it has saved us hundreds of thousands of dollars in the past several years. And residents are happy with that.
Great job.
Andrew,
Yes, thank you.
let's talk financing.
Thank you. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. And thanks, Fatou, that was a great overview. It's a very complicated system of laws that we have, and I learn something new myself every time I hear it. So that was really good. I'm going to talk, I'm the financing specialist. My name's Andrew Chintz at the New York City Accelerator. And as Fatou had mentioned, we provide free service for building owners. And my part is to come in and help with the financing of the work that you want to do. I'm going to talk just briefly at a very high level about PACE financing, which, as you've heard about, is part of Local Law 96, which authorized PACE, and it was accompanied Local Law 97 as a way to pay for the work. And I'll also talk just very briefly again at a high level about other options for financing when PACE isn't a fit for your building. Just as a basic start, just this slide is just why finance energy efficiency upgrades. A lot of people are don't want to take on additional debt and afraid of doing that. But if done right, it really is a great tool and can make avoiding upfront costs and making it more affordable. So that's really one of the main reasons to do it, to avoid putting any upfront money in. Obviously, this is a way to address all the requirements that you have for Local Law 97. Financing can help facilitate a project that you've been trying to do, but just haven't been able to pull the money together, or you don't want to assess tenants, or you don't have the reserves, and so it can make a project move forward. And it's also a way to preserve your building reserves for other capital needs. If you do have other capital needs and you also want to do the energy efficiency work, you can combine that in a financing, which will make the financing that much more cost effective. It'll make the upfront costs associated with financing and taking out loans more cost effective. The other key point when you about financing energy efficiency is that there's often a savings component when you make either your equipment more efficient or your building envelope tighter. There are reductions in your energy cost. You're using less energy as with energy efficiency. So by reducing those up, that's a main operating expense with a building, probably the largest aside from taxes. So reducing that expense makes the building obviously cash flow better. And depending on how the loan is set up, you could actually create enough savings that it not only offsets the loan payment each year, but could actually provide some extra cash flow. You can go to the next slide. So as we've said, New York City Accelerator PACE, which is what PACE is called in New York City, financing was established under Local Law 96. PACE stands for Property Assessed Clean Energy. And what it is, it's a way to finance energy efficiency and renewable energy projects by taking out the financing and paying it back through the tax bill. It's a line item on your tax bill. It borrows another financing tool when public projects are built for communities such as a water and sewer district or a fire district or a business improvement district. Those funds are paid back through the tax bill by the property owner. So in this case, reducing greenhouse gas emissions is a public benefit. But in this case also, you're borrowing the money to do improvements on your own building, on a private building. So it's kind of a hybrid product in that sense. But 36 different states have authorized PACE. It started in California a little over 10 years ago, and it's a very effective tool for this type of financing. Also, just to mention, it's a public-private partnership. So in New York City, it is administered by the city through a contracted entity, but the actual loans are through private lenders. So just to talk about some of the benefits of using PACE financing, you can finance 100% of all of the improvements, and that even includes things like the energy audit that's required to do PACE, and even some ancillary measures. So if you need a new roof, if you're financing solar and the roof needs to be upgraded, something like that could also be included. It's fixed rate, it's non-recourse, and the key also is that it's long-term. It can go out 20, 25 or more years. It's based on the useful life of the improvement that you're financing. So if it's a windows or a roof or a boiler, things that have a long life, that's what dictates what the term is. And the importance of that is that the longer term means you're amortizing the loan longer and the loan payments are smaller. And so those savings can actually offset the payment or more than offset. So this is obviously a way to address your Local Law 97 requirements. The other key feature of PACE is that if you were to sell the building, this is not really an issue so much for co-ops and condos, but if you use PACE on your building and you've decided to sell it, that loan doesn't have to be paid off. It's simply a charge on the tax bill each year. The charge transfers to the new owner and they get the new benefits. There is also a provision in the law in New York City where you can finance some improvements that you recently already finished up to 3 years in the past retroactively. The requirements of PACE are that you need to do an energy audit. That audit dictates, what the measure is that can be financed by PACE. It talks, it's the cost and the savings are all included in that audit. So that's what's used to determine what can be financed. And it's a feasibility study for solar or for some renewable energy system, which you'll hear more about, and Accelerator can also help you with Jose, we'll talk about. The other thing that's needed is if you have a mortgage on the building, because this is a charge in the tax bill and has a senior position from a lien standpoint, the mortgage lender needs to provide consent, which they should because it's a positive for them too. It's improving the asset. The other requirement is that it needs to, the project that you're financing needs to meet a savings to investment ratio of greater than 1. And basically that's just all of the benefits over the course of the loan over the actual loan amount has to be greater than 1. And those benefits can include all the savings. It can include a variety of things, including avoidance of a Local Law 97 penalty. There are some challenges with PACE. It doesn't work for every building. In New York City, we have C-PACE or commercial PACE. It's for all commercial buildings, including multifamily. But condominiums are not allowed. Condominiums are essentially single units, single homeowner units, and that's what's called residential PACE. It's in a few states around the country, but most states have not adopted it. So condominiums cannot access PACE. However, because there are so many condominiums in the city and many of them have been looking to try to use PACE, we are working with Maxwell-Kates on one of the properties they manage, which is a condominium. And in this case, we think we can do PACE because the sponsor owns 1/3 of the units. And we think we can make a PACE loan to the sponsorship entity. And then, while all the building owners benefit from the improvements, the sponsor will assess the rest of the building owners to everybody pay their pro rata share. We think this is something that can work. It needs to get approved within the city and needs to go in front of the city attorneys, but we're excited about it. And if it works, it will open up a pathway for some condominiums. The other issue with PACE is that, as I said, it's private lenders. They have certain minimum sizes that they'll lend to, which is $500,000, and some of them even higher. So if you have a smaller project, $300,000 project, it wouldn't be able to get done by PACE. What we are working on is bringing in some of the PACE lenders to get approved, who will do smaller loans. So that's important because we have so many buildings in the city that need that. Affordable housing properties, I know there's not a big audience here of that, so we don't need to really get into that, but they do have issues on the mortgage consent side. This is just a kind of a roadmap to just, again, help just understand how Accelerator is here to help you and how it would work with PACE. As the building owner, you would come to Accelerator, you would work with an account manager like Fatou, and bring me in as the financing specialist to talk about PACE and figure out whether it meets the requirements and whether your building meets the requirements. And, I would help you access one of the lenders or a few of the lenders. And once that's done, you start an application process with the lender. The lender works with the New York City Energy Efficiency Corporation, which is contracted with the city to administer PACE. And then you go through an underwriting process and close a loan with NYC, and they make sure it gets put on the tax bill, which then gets charged to you when you receive your tax bill twice a year. I would stay involved as much or as little as you would like. I'm here as a resource for you. So since PACE doesn't always work, we are also working on bringing another product to New York City. Connecticut and the Connecticut Green Bank adopted PACE. They were one of the first on the East Coast. They came across the same issues in Connecticut, where it was difficult for condominiums, for smaller properties, for affordable housing. They developed another product called Catalyst Loan, which has the same, very much the same components. It finances energy efficiency and renewable energy. It also finances health and safety improvements. It's principally for multifamily housing, which is a big part of what doesn't fit for PACE, condominiums and affordable housing. And it also is 20-year loan terms. It gets up to 20 years, which is, again, the key of a lot of financing this and being able to have a smaller payment. So this is something we're working on to bring so that if you can't use PACE, it would be, Catalyst will be available. There are other financing options that we can help you with. We have a financing toolkit. There's a little snapshot of it on the right side here. It has a short one-page description of PACE. It has a one-page description of other financing options and a roadmap like this to help, depending on the type of building you are, lead you to the right type of financing. Well, I was going to talk briefly about the other financing options, but the slide went away. Okay, just briefly, the other options that you have are, there's a New York City Energy Efficiency Corporation, which is basically our local green bank, and they will do loans for energy efficiency. PACE and the Catalyst are all we call mid-cycle products. When you're in the middle of your mortgage and you're not ready to refinance your mortgage, that's when those are valuable. But if you are at the end of the mortgage cycle and you're ready to refinance, you can get green mortgages where they'll lend a little bit additional money for energy efficiency and even maybe sometimes get a better rate. So that would be something to look at if you're at that point in time. You wouldn't do that just for the energy efficiency, but if you're also going to be refinancing anyway. There are equipment loan lenders, and you can also lease your equipment. Those are for smaller projects. There's quick turnarounds for those, and those are other lenders we can help you with. There's also another type of solution where you don't really have to come up with the financing, but you enter an agreement, an energy service agreement with a company who comes in. It's like a turnkey solution, and they do all the work and they finance it, and you just agree to, in the case of a power purchase agreement, you'd be agreeing to buy certain solar at a certain price, or you would be paying on another contract for an energy service agreement. So I will just stop there. I know we're running out of time a bit, so I'll just end there and pass it over to Jose, who will talk about the solar.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jose, and thank you so much for the excellent presentation, Andrew and Fatou and everybody else who put this panel together. And it's an honor to be here today. So as Andrew said, I am here representing the New York City Accelerator as their solar specialist. And our goal really is to help buildings throughout New York City to actually adopt a solar energy technology model. And we've done this through our well-tested model through the New York City Accelerator. So far, since we started, we have helped more than 200 buildings in New York City to actually either go solar or do a solar assessment on top of their roof and see what is possible. So how our model works, program model works is as following. Once we would ask that you meet with one of our account managers, like Fatou, who manages and works with many buildings throughout the city. And we will ask you to provide us with the address of your building as well as a copy of 12 months worth of Con Edison bills for us to do a feasibility assessment in which we see the roof and see how much solar potential is actually possible on that roof. And then we can do a cost benefit analysis based on the usage that you are that your building has for the common areas. Then we provide educational programs such as this one, where we present to board members, shareholders, renters, and you name it, anyone who is interested in solar energy technology, introducing you to what this technology looks like, how it works, and we provide a more deep dive rundown of how solar benefits each individual buildings throughout the city. We also provide financing and incentive consultation where we guide you through what incentives are available to your building based at the federal, state, and local level, and how you are able to pay off for the system in a smaller period of time by having all the information available at hand. And in case that your building does want to go solar and move forward with the solar process, we run a competitive procurement process where we ask installers to bid on your project, and we put together what we call a bids comparison form so that you can have clear, transparent information on what each installer is bidding in terms of the system. Just that could be the quality of the panels, the warranties, the size of the inverters, etc. And then we guide you through that process by hosting interviews with those installers and being able to support you throughout the way. Once you have selected an installer, we also help you with the contract negotiation, support you during the permitting and installation process. Our goal is truly to help you be content with your decision of having gone solar. Next slide, please. And I just want to give you a brief introduction of what the incentive levels are for solar energy systems in the city, just so you know, in terms of the buildings that you are all a part of. So there are, for the buildings that I believe are here represented, are condos and co-ops, as well as for-profit rental buildings or market rate buildings. And for condos and co-ops, the state will help pay for the system up front by giving the installers a rebate, which helps you reduce the cost at the beginning. So let's say for a system for co-ops and condos, the state will pay $1 per watt of that system for installations that are 0 to 200 kilowatts DC. For anything above that, will be $1 for 201 to 1 megawatt systems, and then anything above 1 megawatts, the state will pay 50 cents on that project. Additionally, that building can take advantage of the federal tax credit, which means that if you were to go solar this year, your building can claim 26% of the upfront cost. The upfront cost is basically the total cost of the system minus the New York Sun rebate, which is what the state helps pay. And then the upfront cost is what you're responsible for paying. So the upfront cost is from that upfront cost is that you will be able to materialize the federal tax credit. And that's 26% for this year. Next year, it's going to be 22% and 10% the year after. So this year is an excellent year to go solar because you can claim the most of all of the incentives. There are also two other incentives in which your buildings can take advantage of, which is the state tax credit at 25% of the upfront cost, and the property tax abatement, which is 20% of the upfront cost. For-profit rental buildings, the New York State incentive remains the same as the rebate that the state will help in terms of paying for the system, reducing the total cost. $1.20 per watt for systems that are sized at 0 to 200 kilowatts, $1 per watt for systems that are sized at 201 to 1 megawatt, and 50 cents for systems that are sized at above 1 megawatt. And I think that your buildings will not go above the 200 megawatt threshold, or probably no more. I know that not one megawatt. But then for the federal tax credit, the for-profit rentals can take advantage of that 26% this year as well. Next year, 22%, and the year after 10%. What you guys have for federal, for the market rate rental buildings is the accelerated depreciation, which you can claim both depreciate the system for the federal and the state, as well as the property tax abatement. Unfortunately, not for the state tax credit. That's only for homeowners only. Okay. So this is just a breakdown of the systems of how you would be able to monetize your solar energy system, which is by reducing first the common areas electricity usage. And then, for example, shareholders of the co-op can benefit from the federal and the state tax credit. Those goes directly to the shareholders, while the co-op can benefit from the property tax abatement and the solar savings themselves, because that's a common charge. And then for condos, which is the next breakdown. Next slide, please. Yeah, for condos is the owners, which are the shareholders, can monetize from the federal tax credit, the state tax credit, and the property tax abatement, while the condo itself shares the electrical usage in the common area. That's for the solar savings. And rental buildings, which is the final breakdown, just so you guys have a Venn diagram of it. Next slide, please. Before that. Yes, and for rental buildings, the building owner, which is the owner of that property, can monetize from the federal tax credit, the property tax abatement, the accelerated depreciation, and savings on the common area electricity usage, while the renters will have the value of living in a building that has clean green energy technology on site. And then finally, I wanted to show you how this looks like in terms of solar cost savings. So if you were to invest solar after all incentives are secure, you may be able to pay that system after 3 years, and excluding tax credits, which means, like, let's say in the scenario that you're not receiving any of the tax credits, you still may be able to save, pay off the system in a period of after 7 years, only based on the solar energy savings. And how can you finance solar energy systems? You can do it in 3 different ways. If the building already has money at hand, through the reserves, or through just projects through your sales of a unit, etc., then you can just pay that as a cash up front, or you can do it through a loan. As Andrew already explained, there are financing options that can help offset the cost of that system, and you will own that system. That's called cash purchase. And then the other way that you can finance your solar energy system is through a third-party provider. And that one can be done through a power purchase agreement, in where you agree with a separate entity to pay for the system, while they claim the federal tax credit and the accelerated depreciation on that system, while the co-op, condo, or building can still benefit from receiving the property tax abatement and the credits, the carbon credits for having installed a solar energy system on top of your roof. But in case solar is not possible, there is always a final option, which is enrolling in a community shared solar project that it has already been installed in the city, and receiving a discounted rate for the price of the electricity at a 10 to 20% by joining a community solar project. And for PPA as well, you would receive a discounted price for the system, as you would be the main anchor tenant of that system. And that's my presentation. And now I will leave you with Faith Rodriguez Price, who is responsible for helping Maxwell-Kates be able to do all the compliance on your end. So she is the right person to speak to on your behalf.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Jose. So I just want to do a quick segment on regulation versus reality. Implementation of local laws does not come without its hiccups. As the director of Maxwell-Kates, the compliance department with Maxwell-Kates, I oversee and ensure the filings of our clients' local law 84 submissions every year, provide our clients with their local law 33 energy grade for posting, and will more than likely be assisting in the submission of local law 97 come May 1st of 2025. I'm just going to quickly touch upon some common misunderstandings with these local laws Fatou mentioned previously, what the implementation of these local laws mean to you and how it affects our clients. First one I just want to touch on was benchmarking. Local Law 84 was implemented in 2009 and has been filed annually since then, but the requirements for submissions didn't mean much. The regulation was simply to submit a filing. The accuracy of the filing was more or less irrelevant. Now the information submitted to New York City on your Local Law 84 report automatically generates your building's energy grade for posting, Local Law 33, and your Local Law 97 carbon emission usage and potential fines. Every year after the Local Law 84 report is submitted, I provide our clients with their Local Law 97 building assessment. This is generated automatically from the information that was submitted in your Local Law 84 report. When you receive your updated Local Law 97 assessments each year, it is vital for the boards to be reviewing the building's topology and ensure accuracy. Building information such as total number of units, total number of bedrooms, square footage, number of washer and dryer units, identification of cell towers, and so on. It all play a vital role in calculating your building's current emissions. For our current clients, you should expect to receive your updated 97 assessment report by the end of this month. Next slide, Andy. Common misunderstandings for Local Law 33 and your energy grade. Again, your Local Law 33 energy grade is generated automatically from your Local Law 84 submission. Therefore, it is possible for your grade to change from year to year. There is no way to update or change your grade after your Local Law 84 submission on 5/1. If your building is in the middle of implementing green initiatives and finishes mid-year, your grade will not reflect that change until your next filing cycle. Receiving a non-applicable grade does not exempt your building from Local Law 97. If your building does not receive a grade for posting and is 25,000 square feet or more, you are still subject to comply with Local Law 97. Next slide. These are some common issues that have come across the last few years, filing your 84 submissions, generating your scores. So I just wanted to make everyone aware, if this has happened to you, the Department of Buildings is aware of these current issues and it is a work in progress to fix them. So there is some discrepancies I've seen with the Department of Buildings database that generates your Local Law 33 energy grade. Sometimes the grade and score does not match what was actually submitted in your Local Law 84 submission. One year your building might generate a grade and one year you may not. And then again, properties, especially multi-use properties, typically receive a not applicable grade. Though these energy grades are an eyesore for a lot of the property owners and they do not like posting them, the grade itself should not be your primary concern. In order to obtain the most updated, accurate information for your building, you need to be reviewing your 97 assessments. The issues with the buildings department database that generates your grade does not affect your Local Law 84 submission whatsoever. So if there's errors in the one area, I would not be concerned that there's any additional errors. Next slide. Okay, some additional considerations while you're reaching out to your energy consultant, you're reaching out to the Accelerator program, just some things to keep in the back of your minds. Although it is not part of the Climate Mobilization Act, Local Law 134 to go into effect and is due no later than January 1st of 2025. This requires all multifamily buildings greater than 295,000 square feet to install or modify lighting systems and to upgrade to LED lighting controls. The inspection requirements for this local law has not been finalized yet. And when we do receive some additional information, that will be released to the boards for review. Additionally, we should be considering electrification systems. The highest energy uses for multifamily buildings is heating and cooling systems, and the second is water heating. The transition to electric means replacing all fossil fuels and implementing new energy electric systems. Next, Andy. You may be thinking there's not a lot of things on the market right now in order to implement electrification, and how will the grid handle this capacity? We're nowhere ready to do that. You are correct. So the U.S. Green Building Council, NYSERDA, and the New York Power Authority are all working together right now to install infrastructure in New York City to provide us with enough renewable energy for wind, solar, and hydropower. It's an $11 billion infrastructure project that's going to compromise over 20 wind and solar generation projects in New York State, and it's created a 175-mile underground transmission line that will deliver approximately 7.5 million megahertz of emission-free energy into New York City every year. This construction is expected to be completed no later than 2025. This infrastructure will allow New York City the ability, and our buildings, the ability to consider electrification for their properties. I just wanted to also make note that electrification, a lot of people are concerned that electrification is a lot more expensive than gas, and there is no current incentive for property owners to switch over. That was brought up to NYSERDA back in the October seminar, and they are looking into ways to incentivize property owners to go electric. I do not foresee anything coming out until at least 2025. Once the grid is ready, all the vendors are going to start producing their new equipment that can handle the load, and then we will go from there.
All right, wonderful. Thank you, everybody, for a very informative presentation. I'm going to open it up to questions. I see that in the Q&A, there have been some questions that have been responded to by Fatou and Andrew. So I'm not going to, start with my questions. I want to make sure we get to everybody's questions from the audience, from the viewers. So Ted Wind in the chat asked, is the RAB or other entity yet engaging in litigation based on the unfairness of many parameters on which penalties regarding carbon emission reductions are based, such as density of population in a building, mix of types of apartments, etc.? Does somebody want to take that question?
Could you just repeat that one last time?
Yeah, and in the TRV, what's that? What's the acronym?
RAB?
Yes.
Realty Advisory Board or other entity?
Oh, in litigation based on I see it here.
I think I'm just going to take a high level stab at the question and not necessarily go into details, because with Local Law 97, given how it puts a carbon emission limit on our buildings and what it requires not only to comply, but also it's an opportunity to reduce carbon annual energy spend for any building, regardless of compliance. Just 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, I've seen some litigations that have hit the media that is coming from multifamily buildings. Honestly, I haven't really looked into it, but I think this is one of those things that is kind of anticipated, and we've been kind of hearing it in the grapevine that it would happen with COVID and everything else. It hadn't happened quick enough, but I think this is not the end of it that we're seeing. Now, does it mean that we're going to slow down with complying with Local Law 97? Perhaps not. The law is as it is for now until the city comes up with something otherwise. That train keeps moving is what I would say.
Yeah, just to touch on what Fatou said as well. This is ever changing. These local laws will be edited multiple times from now until the first filing cycle. So the best thing that we can do is just keep our eyes open. pay attention to what's going on, and if there are any adjustments in the law that do directly affect our clients, that we'll be reaching out, letting them know. The accelerator program will be letting them know, and your energy consultant that you hire will be on top of it and making sure that it doesn't affect you negatively.
Okay, so there are some questions that I would like to kind of share. I don't think people can see the Q&A. I don't know if you can all see that, but the couple of questions from Miguel David. Why isn't New York City providing the service to make the calculation to relieve homeowners from this burden of a failure to appropriately report the proper footage? And Fatou, can you just expound on that?
So as Andrew has mentioned, I mean, again, the city typically does not provide incentives to comply with the law, right? If you need to comply with local law 87, for example, or 84, it's up to the owner of the property to hire the right person to comply with. However, and by the way, Andrew Stepin or Valerie, who's a colleague of mine that's on the call as well, is that with local law 897, what I'm understanding is that, let's say with PACE financing, if you are doing a study and you hire an energy engineering company or service provider, and you're looking at financing the cost of that study, that component of identifying how do you verify the square footage, or all of that stuff can be rolled into the cost of financing that project. Now, if it's not a PACE finance mechanism, but you're financing your project through another provider, this could be a traditional lender. That doesn't mean that the traditional lender doesn't do that, but it helps to work with a lender who understands energy efficiency, and they might fund that. But we wouldn't know unless we're working with a particular building and knowing who they're working with, so we can kind of see what they cover and don't cover.
And additionally, I want to add to that, a response to that question is that's one of the reasons why the New York City Accelerator was actually created, is to support buildings to be able to figure out how they can meet the requirements established by local law 97. So that's where Fatou and other account managers on the New York City Accelerator come in, is to support you to be able to see how your letter grade can match a letter grade that makes sure that your building is reducing the carbon emissions. So your building right now is at, let's say, a letter D grade. That means that your building is emitting a lot of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, which means that the penalty will be much more higher. But if you work with the New York City Accelerator, with Fatou or other specialists or experts in the field, they may be able to help you to figure out what strategies you need to establish in order to bring down those costs. And that's the New York City Accelerator is a program that was created by the city itself for that same purpose. And then you have people like me who specialize in solar, who can help you come up with the strategies on how to implement those plans, or members like Andrew, who are specializing in financing, who will help you figure out what are the ways that you can finance those projects to make sure that you reduce that letter grade. There are other partners through the New York City Accelerator, that like the Building Energy Exchange, that have a calculator that helps you identify how much carbon your building is emitting, and how you can how you can take a step forward to make sure that those emissions are being reduced.
I just want to also add, I think it's been brought out, but just so everybody knows, this New York City Accelerator, all these services we're talking about are free to building owners. We're an objective third-party advisor that helps you as much or as little as you want, but it's totally free, and just want to make sure everybody knows that.
I just wanted to also just touch on Miguel's point about, I believe his concern is the fine for writing down the incorrect square footage. Now, I just wanted to make it clear that when you file your local 84 submission, the Department of Finance does have your building square footage annotated, and you are allowed a 10% variance plus or minus to the Department of Finance's numbers. So I wouldn't be too concerned with incorrectly reporting your proper square footage. I would just ensure that when your local law 84 submission goes through, just take a look at what was submitted and just make sure that it's accurate. And then we can verify with the energy consultant that it falls within a 10% variance. But typically we don't have problems with that, because the city will actually kick back the submission if there's an error like that. So it doesn't even usually get past that point. So I wouldn't be too concerned with that.
And I just wanted to also add one more point, is that in the case, for example, that working with people like Faith, who are closely looking at your energy building compliance is really important for your building, because you have somebody that is inside working directly one-on-one with your specific buildings, and then they can communicate with the New York City Accelerator. So you have a much more like a much more closer look at what the needs of your individual buildings are. So that's how we create this partnership. So if you're working with Faith, who knows exactly what's happening at the building level, then she could communicate with Fatou, who will help you, come up with different strategies and then address the specific needs of the individual buildings that Faith and Andy are working on from Maxwell-Kates perspective. Because we manage a ton of buildings, but they only work with yours.
Right, we're going to provide to everyone who attended probably in a day or two some information about the energy consultants that I work directly with for your buildings, and provide everyone's contact information if anyone wants to reach out and start getting started on coming up with their pathway for compliance.
Faith and Mark, can I expand on one thing? I think, Faith, when you did your presentation, you talked about how the different local laws have different compliance paths. And sometimes when you're not familiar with them, we tend to conflate them, right?
Right.
And local law requires this, and local law 84 requires X, and local law 97 requires this, right? What I would say is that if you're looking at your property and you're sort of, things got muddied up, reach out to your Maxwell-Kates team, and Faith as a compliance director. And the Department of Buildings is always looking at what the Department of Finance is saying and the Department of Buildings. And it's a really convoluted process, and it's never a straight answer. And it can be very frustrating. But the opportunity here is it does not have to, because we're looking at these things very closely every day. And if you need help, you have a resource to reach out to. So you could reach out to Faith, as Jose was saying, and Faith can reach out to us if she needs us, and we can cross our heads together and try to come up with a solution.
Thank you, everybody. We are slightly over time, but there's a ton of information, and I think we got through it pretty well. There are a couple of additional questions here. For those who would like to remain on, we can perhaps remain another 5 minutes and make sure that all the questions that are there are answered. For example, yes, this is being recorded and will be available. You can access the link, which will be on our YouTube channel, the video, and so that will be accessible. We will follow up with an email to all the participants, as Faith mentioned before, that with details about who to contact and access to the recording. As it relates to some of these other questions, there's another question from Miguel regarding temporary use of oil. I guess the dual fuel kind of paradigm, which a lot of buildings currently have. They might have converted to gas and they've got oil as backup, or they have, they're sort of in that in-between space. Are buildings penalized because the utilities natural gas distribution isn't sufficient to heat residents? In other words, it's not always available. So can you go to oil, and are they penalized? I think that's the meat of the question.
So the buildings are not going to be penalized directly for natural gas distribution not being sufficient. The buildings are being strictly penalized based on their carbon emission usage that is submitted to the city, and only that. Con Edison there were a lot of state, local laws and code requirements for Con Edison in order to comply and to be able to keep up with this demand. They're currently working on installing smart meters and doing an array of other things in order to prepare for local law 97. So there is nothing currently that I am aware of, but again, this is ever changing. And as we get closer to the first compliance deadline, I'm sure we're going to see an array of changes, and maybe potentially this will be addressed at that point if this is still ongoing.
So thank you, Faith, for that. Miguel, I'm thinking about when you say dual fuel, you're talking about boilers that have oil and natural gas, and they would use fuel oil for demand management strategy. Is that, because if you're participating in demand management strategies and you have a period where Con Edison or National Grid has a demand management incident, then you would switch between those two fuels. Now, how that affects local law 97 compliance is very nuanced. And I'm not sure if that's, again, could we like have him speak up so he can elaborate on that or no?
We can allow Miguel to talk. Miguel, you're on. If you're so inclined.
Yeah. Oh, it could be a cold weather climate thing. If you're outside of New York City, you know, there's places where you use fuel oil or propane because it's a lot colder than in the 5 boroughs, which does not apply when it comes to the Climate Mobilization Act laws.
Okay, so I think we'll leave it there. As you can see, there is a lot of information, and I want to thank my fellow panelists for their, incredible, presentation and answering all your questions. Again, if you have other questions that haven't been answered by this particular session, we're all available to provide answers. So with that, I want to thank you all for spending your valuable time with us. Sorry, we're a little over. We hope you found it useful, and thank you. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Bye.